I'm Shieldsy from Evocators.
And this is the Tomb of Lime podcast, where we explore black metal only. And this... okay, I'm giving this up. This is our exploration of the album NihilReich, track by track. We're up to the song The Peons of the Cosmos, which is our big black metal song.
Blech.
Well, Nick, I want to talk to you about children. You ready?
Hello, Matthew. I'm ready.
Okay. So...
Not ready for children, but I'm ready to talk about children, you know.
Oh, yeah, okay. That's a different conversation. No, so some scientists, they like to do tests on children, so I read about a test they did on some children. Oh, sometimes, mostly it's, you can't get permission to do it. You can't test a lot of things on kids because it's, unethical, right? Like drugs. They used to be able to do that, but they can't do it anymore. But it's irrelevant. The point is they do sometimes do psychological tests on them, okay? And in one instance, they showed kids of varying ages, like scary faces and distorted faces and things like this, right? Mm-hmm. And at some certain age, and then after the point which they can recognize faces, even some point after that, again, they started to be freaked out by freaky faces. Okay. And what they kind of worked out from this research, or I think this is the thesis of it, is that when they're first exposed to scary faces, they don't know that they're not normal, right? They just see them and they're just like, well, everyone might look like that. Maybe half the population.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, and then they show them a goblin face. At some point, when they realize what people actually look like, they suddenly go, wow, okay, that's not for me.
Yeah.
Okay. And the reason I bring this up is because I kind of feel like there's something there in a similar vein that happens with music as well. I imagine nowadays, with extreme metal being kind of everywhere, more and more people at a younger age are exposed to it. But I kind of feel like people, they're not sort of naturally inclined to like a lot of what's going on in these kinds of genres, okay? And it's something that has to be, like a taste that has to be acquired, let's say.
Yep.
Yeah. And so, my question to you is, how do you think people go about acquiring a taste for things that, when they first hear it, it turns them off or they don't like it? And do you think everyone kind of arrives at that place the same way? Or
So for music?
Yeah. I think
it would be kind of universal, but specifically about music, I think it's a gateway. There will be a gateway to that acquired taste that is like a small stepping stone to... Well, from where you're currently at to the next level, I guess, of whichever direction that you're heading in,
Okay, yeah.
So
normalizing it.
Over time, normalizing through certain steps and through certain gateways, whether or not there's a single like major gateway or a number of sort of less extreme gateways or less extreme gateways.
Were you introduced to extreme metal gradually enough for that to never be a problem?
Yes.
Or, so there was never a point where you heard something that was too extreme for you and went, nah, I'm not.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah?
Yeah, they're always, growing up listening to different kinds of music and sort of slowly pushing that envelope. There was parts where I'd listen way outside of the envelope of what I was used to and think, oh, whoa, that's not for me.
Yeah.
And I'm of course referring to extreme metal.
Yeah, but you did change your mind eventually.
Easily listening to more extreme music than that now.
Yeah.
But at the time, in my foray into that.
But I feel like there are also... Well, okay.
Yeah.
Do you think there are people then that... I know people... normals, people that have been exposed to extreme metal in a similar situation to you, but they seem to have been turned right off it and never want to go down that road, if you know what I mean.
I guess.
So is there a difference in the people that end up going down the road? Or?
Oh, there would have to be. It's a curiosity thing. I mean, it would have to be. If you weren't curious to explore it, or maybe it's not curiosity, and it's just a happy, lucky exposure. Like you, all of a sudden, you're exposed to something that you haven't heard before, and it's a bit outside of what you normally listen to, and go, you know what? That's really like striking a chord with me. I'd have to say that that's happened for me. I can't think of a specific example, but it's all about those stepping stones or that gateway from what you're normally listening to the new thing. If it didn't strike a chord with you, you'd never re-explore it, right? Whether or not you're in a car, in a friend's car, and you're listening to the music that they've just got on, and you hear something that you've never heard before, and you think, "Oh man, this is awesome," and then you go try and find it for yourself. Or, those little taster CDs that used to get on the cover of Metal Hammer and Kerrang and stuff like that. Yeah, definitely. You're exposed to lots of bands through stuff like that.
Yeah. So I'm thinking of the kind of people, I mean, surely you know some people who are just like not into metal at all. And, I know someone who's like, oh, you don't know anybody? Like, I know someone who's like, I'm sure they've said to me something like, they don't mind hearing metal when it comes on, but as soon as the vocalist is screaming, it just turns them off that thing. I'm just wondering, like, I mean, not that I'm like motivated to try and trick this person into enjoying music that they don't like or something, but I'm trying to work out how it is that a person goes from the
not accepting screaming to accepting screaming.
Yeah, for example, because I'm sure there's certain musics that I heard at some point and was like, no, that's not for me. I had a friend who really loves Opeth now, but the first time, like, he came into that from a more power prog area, and Mikhail sang on the Aeon album.
Yeah.
And mostly he was doing clean singing, but occasionally he was doing that death growl. And that part of it just really turned him off and he didn't like it.
Really?
But it's...
even on such a thing?
Well, yeah, because
wow.
I think that was a mostly pretty melodic... I think if you've come in from the power metal area and screaming is not really for you, and then you've got this mostly proggy, mostly melodic thing, and then there's sudden bursts of, death metal growling, that it was jarring. You might think, you might think, oh, that just sat so well in there that it doesn't make sense that it would be out of place. But I think for people who aren't used to it, those sort of, especially those deep guttural growls.
Yeah, sure. Like there's an example of what you're talking about on one of your own tracks. The yellow disc.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Yeah. That song.
Admiral or
it's all clean sung, right? Except for that one line, which is just like, whoa. I wonder if, what you're talking about, someone could get into it and enjoy that song, except that one bit.
Yeah, maybe.
I don't think that the songs like that Aeon that you're talking about and the Loom song, that's not the gateway for someone to get into extreme vocals as a listener.
Because it's too far off the deep end?
It's way far off for such a short time. There's seemingly no build-up. As well-practiced listeners as, such as us, we can fit it in. It works for us, right?
Yeah.
It's not foreign to us.
No.
We can accept that or even appreciate when it's tastefully done, even as short and sharp as it is. I feel like a gateway to get someone to go into extreme vocals is there'd be bands and even albums by certain bands where the music is like absurdly heavy.
Yeah.
Or getting like really on the heavy side of things, with no extreme vocals at all.
Okay.
Right. This music exists.
Yeah, okay.
There's some stuff like in this like Gent World.
Oh, yeah.
With stuff like that, right?
Yes.
Absurdly heavy guitars and drums and riffs and crazy stuff going on, but all clean singing.
Yeah, okay.
And then here's where the gateway is. There's other super similar bands that have both or all kinds of different vocals. And if you can gradually like wean them into that. Because in that style of music, those vocal crossovers aren't abrasive. I get this is a weird perspective thing because it's normal for me, right?
Yeah.
I think that it would be possible. That would be the most likely.
When I think about like how screaming came about in metal, it was sort of a gradual process from just harsh melodic vocals, and it suddenly went off the deep end. And I guess people who came along with that were, introduced to it gradually. But we're in a position now where people might be totally unaware that this stuff exists, and then be exposed to the most extreme examples of it. And it must be too much to go too far at once, right? So you got to go gradually, I suppose. But even it feels like even among the extreme metal people, there might be is there some stuff that's too extreme for you to appreciate it, even among extreme metal, even as the connoisseur there? Like, are there genres that turn you off?
Me personally?
Yeah, let's say.
I can't really get my head around slam.
Oh, yeah, okay.
It's, you know, I appreciate that. I've seen some slam bands live before. I can see those guys are talented musicians, right?
Yeah.
There's some wacky stuff going on there. But I just can't wrap my head around how it sounds or how it's supposed to sound or the appeal around it.
Metal's like one of those weird things where it's like you could take a snippet of any given band and go, yeah, that sounds like it could fit really well into the kind of music I like. But then you construct a certain genre sound around it, like slam. You know, when I first hear slam, and I was like, the blast beats are going, I'm like, yes, this is my jam. And then it's, it's not.
You keep listening, it's like, oh.
What? Okay,
yeah,
what?
Where
No,
did that
this
go?
is different. Yeah. Not what I expected to happen. Yeah. One genre I'm thinking of in particular that I would want to talk about today because of the music that we're looking at is black metal.
Sure.
Why don't you like it, Nick? Don't you?
I do like black metal.
Oh, okay, cool. So, I mean,
where are you getting this from?
No, I'm just making it up.
Good.
But I'm just like I'm just thinking, black metal, I think, sort of cut its teeth on, well, at some stage, the second wave, I don't know, or the third Norwegian, whatever, cut its teeth on being deliberately sounding terrible and being bad. And
Sure.
I think deliberately putting a bigger gate in front of the listener to stop them enjoying it, if you know what I mean.
Yes.
Okay. When we've already sort of discussed how difficult or gradual it has to be to get from one place to another in extreme metal genres, it feels like black metal is one of these places where if it's deliberately trying to stop people from enjoying it in a way, it's like it's challenging the listener to go past production value to find something musical to enjoy there, I suppose. How when something is deliberately trying to turn you off of itself, did people come to appreciate it? I mean, and I wonder myself, have we been duped or tricked, or is there how would you describe the appeal of a genre that is deliberately trying to be unappealing?
Yeah, that's a good question. I wouldn't even know how to answer that on my own, from my own experience or on my own behalf. It's just a kind of a thing that.
So you have been tricked, you think?
Yeah, I guess so. Look, and the trick worked. I'd like to think that if I knew I was tricked, then it's like all bets are off. I'm done. But no, it's not. I like black metal.
Yeah,
it's not something that I very often go and put on listen to on purpose. But when someone shows me something cool, I'll listen to it. I'll appreciate it, and I'll go find other albums by that band and other related artists and listen to that too.
So I suppose a lot of black metal is much more appealing than the olden days. I mean, and of course, there's modern stuff that's deliberately trying to sound like that old stuff as well.
Again, and this is a perspective of someone who's already listening to other kinds of extreme metal. Black metal's just another version of that, another branch of that. So certainly wasn't exposed to much black metal back in the day. Me as a young kid, growing up and finding my feet in the music that I like. Black metal wasn't really a part of that until I got right to the extents of, the death metal that I'd been listening to. And I don't know that people can be tricked. They either like it or they don't. I think, again, it's a gradual thing.
Like, do you think maybe the fact that it is sort of deliberately trying to be difficult to grasp and digest maybe comes to part of the appeal? It's like, sometimes, it's like, what do you call it, gambler's fallacy or something, where you buy something and because you put the money into it, you're kind of more intent on enjoying it, if you know what I mean?
When asked first to choose one of two options, and then later to indicate which option particular features had been associated with, younger adults tended to attribute and misattribute more positive features to the option they chose than to the foregone option. M. Mather and M.K. Johnson.
Here's a controversial opinion. Posers.
Yeah.
Right? You like something, even though you know it's bad. You don't really like it, but you just try to tell people that you like it.
Okay.
And then you might.
And if you do that enough, Stockholm Syndrome sets in and you actually do start enjoying it?
Probably. I like what I'm hearing, and if I don't like it, I don't really hear it.
Yeah.
I don't go looking for it.
But we've
Or-
already discussed that has happened, and then
That-
you
that
did
has
end up
happened.
liking it later because.
Yep.
Okay.
But I didn't have to try. It wasn't an effort. I can imagine back in the early days, like you say, with the gatekeeping and people are deliberately trying to sound bad, and
Yeah.
whoever didn't appreciate that, they were either steered away or they went. Yeah, I don't know. That's a tricky one.
Is there older stuff that, relevant of the fact that it's black metal, that, or even newer stuff that has a raw or a sound or an unpolished, unprofessional, the things you wouldn't typically say are good production, let's say, or even, that you actually appreciate those lo-fi or, underdeveloped or primitive or whatever elements to the music? And what is it about those things that does appeal to you when you know objectively, if you were to describe what a good production sounded like, none of those things would appear there? Do you think it's just an emotional attachment to the music? Or
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
I'm not particularly a fan of something sounding bad on purpose. There are other elements of black metal. To say that like the kind of music you're listening to and someone's made it sound bad on purpose doesn't make it black metal. There are other elements to make it black metal.
Yes.
And the sounding bad or the poor production value is not one of the things that I'm a big fan of. I
Okay.
appreciate that it's part of its heritage and its DNA. There's black metal now without that, right?
Yes.
There's black metal with good production value.
Yeah.
Hipster black metal.
Yeah, for example.
And yeah, I like how that sounds. Mm-hmm. And that's a hipster would say that. or not. They would say like, oh, it's not real black metal. That's not true.
Depends which kind of hipster you are, I
Sure.
guess.
Yeah.
True cult hipster or...
I'm sure there's loads of other examples of other kinds of metal or, bands, records that sound bad. You don't appreciate them for sounding bad. You appreciate them for the other things.
Okay, but here's the
Brush
thing.
over the
I
fact
think
that it sounds bad.
the black metal is the unique in that regard because it was a deliberate effort. It wasn't like they didn't have enough money. And as time's gone on, I'm sure people have paid extra to sound worse.
Yeah.
But at least in the day, it was just... I guess it was trying to give the middle finger to the kind of plastic, overproduced, popular whatever was going on at the moment in a post,
That
hair metal
and
world.
coupled with probably like these are like poor kids recording with whatever equipment they could get their hands
Yes,
on.
yeah. But
I
mean,
need reverb, so I'm going to do it in the bathtub.
yeah, but it's like even other demos from the equally poor kids around the time didn't necessarily have to sound so bad as that.
Yeah.
I'm sure it was.
They went the extra mile
Yes, yeah.
by recording it in the bathtub.
Yeah. But that was a deliberate move on their part to sound bad, and it was part of the ethos, and they deliberately had the just photocopied looking album artwork with the high contrast, because it was the opposite of what the elements of music they were unhappy with were doing, and people dug it. You think that it's just a hipster Stockholm syndrome thing that they were just. Or
There has to be more than that.
yeah,
though.
the guys who were making this music had already listened to a bunch of proto black metal that had influenced them into making what they were
Yeah,
making.
it came from somewhere, right?
And it was by all accounts, metal generally was probably a little bit raw compared to the pop music, or at least outside of the.
It was anyway. Yeah.
Yeah, well, again, we were in a post-hair metal band where everything was really overproduced and whatever. But I'm sure the bands that led into black metal, the beginning like Venom, that was just more like a thrash band, and then the guys that were influenced like that, still pretty raw in comparison to popular music. So maybe they were just taking it a step further. Maybe it was more gradual than I sort of thought about.
Yeah, like you say, these European black metal bands influenced by whatever American band was doing at the time, and Venom, it's thrash. And then these Norwegian kids are just doing that badly, trying to emulate their heroes, but putting another spin on it by giving it that aesthetic. The cheap, spooky, all that kind of crap.
But one thing I do like the idea of in poor production is that if production isn't important to you, then you can appreciate that music on a level that's not to do with the production. But for someone where production is an integral part of how they enjoy music, they're not going to be able to. So there's that.
Not necessarily. I think there might be some people that can look past it and have high hopes for, like, hey, that's really cool music. I hope they can find a producer one day.
And then they don't, or they do, and they still sound just as bad. You know, it's like, but yeah, and then of course there are people who aren't like that, who are like, I like the sound of this badly produced record. You know, I for once think that old school sound has a sort of atmospheric quality to it. Now you can be deliberately atmospheric with other techniques these days, with just put reverb on everything, but maybe that's nostalgia. Maybe it's just I remember growing up and listening to these things and going, yeah, that reminds me of the good old days. But what was it reminding me of then? I don't know. I guess the other thing is it might be intrinsically kind of dark, and you know, it might be part of the appeal of heavy metal, exploring that darker parts of us, and you know, the emotional connection of just really nasty sounding music can be a part of feeling kind of nasty. Yeah,
I mean that's one thing that black metal has going for it. It sounds nasty, like regardless of the production. Yeah.
It's deliberately jarring in a lot of, you know, really not just abrasive. In the production, but in the way the music, the way it's written as well. Of course, bands buck those trends as well, and in lots of interesting ways. Even the early ones, you know, Emperor was very melodic for the time, but very dark.
Very dark.
So, you know, when I'm thinking about Peons of the Cosmos, I mean, this is what my fifth attempt on this album to write a black metal song, and I think the most
came out the
most black metal song on there that we did so far. And I think it's kind of, you know, when I listened to it again, I thought, maybe it's not as black metal as I thought it was, but maybe it's just the darkest one. But I guess they might be both true, because there's lots of extended tremolo picking sections and lots of, you know, just minor chords everywhere, no major chords to be seen.
Like many of the other songs, it starts off quite black metal, kind of massive black metal though. Yeah,
and I mean, this song also has a chorus in it as well, like maybe second chorus on the album, which might not be typical of what you'd think if I was going for my black metal song, but this one I think better returns to black metal every time I get off track, I'll come back quickly to black metal. It's like I'm getting better at keeping my focus on the task at hand, as it were. And directly after the chorus, there's a guitar solo, which is kind of soaring in it. Like that's a technique I like, actually, is where I've done the chorus, and then immediately after we just play the chorus again, but with guitar solo instead of vocals. And it's really a good opportunity for a guitar solo to carry the energy of the song forwards. I think there's not many places I would be like, oh, I'll just play the riff again, because, you know, it goes against the ethos of what I was doing. But it seemed right in that case, where you could just sort of lift the song up even further with the guitar solo. Sometimes guitar solos, you know, feel like they don't have a purpose so much as to let the guitar have their just spot to shine. Wankery, yes, but I feel like that was a part that really worked in this song.
You know how all of your songs chop and change quite a lot, and how one part sounds to the next completely different. This flows quite well from that like black metal verse into that solo, and you're thinking, oh, solo, and then straight out of that solo, this other part that's sort of far removed from anything else on the record. But it's fine. Like, it makes sense. And I wonder if the guitar solo had an influence on how the next part of the song came out.
I can't think of it being any other way. So it might have just been first instincts.
Give us your answer in the comments, Steve.
If you can remember back that far. I'm not sure I can. So, yeah, after that sort of melodic vocal section, it goes... There's a minor chord arpeggio, and then straight back into blast beats. You know, I always associated blast beats with black metal, but as I understand it, I'm not sure they originated in black metal, and they obviously gone far beyond to think that there is a Dream Theater song with a blast beat in it, and Opeth song that briefly had blast beats on one of their albums as well, like a Watershed, I think it was. You know, it's like proggy bands, even proggiest of bands end up having blast beats in there somewhere. Oh yeah. But to me, it's still still, I know how intrinsic it is to like more brutal death metal as well, but I just can't help but feel like it's a black metal thing. I can't imagine a whole lot of black metal if there was
Without
none.
them.
Yeah, but I think black metal may be a more diverse genre than people give it credit for. And the sort of punkier, riff-heavy black metal that exists as well certainly still feels like black metal when you're hearing those parts. It's just that usually they're flanked by blast beats here and there.
Yeah.
But obviously I really like blast beats. It might be the case these days that they're overdone or they're just everywhere now and they've lost their impact. But
I don't know. I think when you talk about blast beats being synonymous with black metal, that it's how relentless the blast beats are in black metal compared with those other examples that you said. Some other death metal, and not so much known for blast beats as it is for just like lots of relentless double bass. And then the proggy stuff, Opeth and Dream Theater, there's some blast beats in there, right? But not like all the time like black metal is. So that's a pretty general rule of thumb you could give it.
Yeah, actually, I think you're right there, because I think one of the other things I feel about black metal is they're sort of trying to find ways to oppress the listener, as it were. Okay, and wearing on their listening stamina, let's say, their ability to tolerate so much of a given thing. Black metal certainly has this thing where it tries to kind of wear out the listener in a way, and blast beats are fatiguing, I think.
Even to listen to.
Yes. Yes, even to listen to, not let alone play.
Yeah.
And I think one of the things on this song that I did want to do is that give you that sort of, it's like almost there's just enough respite from the blast beats that you kind of starting to feel relaxed before they hit you again. And there's lots of places, I think probably throughout the rest of the album, where I've tried to go for some kind of balance between heavy and soft and fast and slow and so on. But this one, it's like you almost deliberately play with the expectations that you've now built out by going, as soon as you think you're going to go into something more reasonable, you don't. And then you just hit them with the more blast beats again. And so maybe it wasn't so much trying to make a black metal song and keep remembering that it was a black metal song after every second riff or whatever. It was just about fatiguing the listener, oppressing the listener, and playing with the expectations. Some black metal that you listen to that, it's just blast beats all the way, like like back to front. And when it's like blast beats you can play slowly as well, and it becomes almost an atmospheric thing as well.
Can you play them?
Blast beats on a drum kit?
Yeah.
No, man. I have absolutely zero affinity for the pots and pans.
There are drumsticks here. I saw
they're probably Steve's. I'm sure I'm sure we had a set of sticks here at all times for when he came over.
Do you have a drum kit here?
Guitar Hero drum kit. Yeah.
Excellent.
That's. The room on the other side of this wall here, where my child now sleeps in his cot, used to be the drum room.
Yeah.
When I was allowed such a thing in the house, but obviously it's been since converted to a nursery and bedroom. Can't play drums in here anymore.
Not with that attitude.
But you see these really talented guys who can play drums and guitar and sing and do all that stuff. And there's plenty of and there's plenty of those one man black metal bands who do everything on the thing themselves. And I thought, maybe I could pick up the sticks and learn and hit some pots and pans and things. But I've decided to no. It's
too much.
Well, it's the jack of all trades, master of none thing.
That's black metal.
It's like at some point you've got to stop the idea that you'll have everything, I guess, and concentrate on the things that you know that you can do the best. Or perhaps not.
That's going okay for you.
Perhaps I should just sleep less and just, find more time to play drums.
You can sleep when you're dead.
The sleeping fox catches no poultry, and they'll be sleeping enough in the grave. Benjamin Franklin.
Sure. Too tricky. All right, let's talk about lyrics.
All right.
Let's talk about demons. There's a old French dude, Laplace, I forget his first name. There's this thing called Laplace's...
Monsieur.
Yeah, okay. Laplace's demon, okay?
Yeah.
He came up with this idea that if there was a creature in the universe that had knowledge of the locations of all the atoms and all the forces that were enacting on them at any given single point in time, he could predict infinitely into the future, I think, and probably into the past as well, and know exactly what would happen based on where everything is and where it was going at that time.
An intellect which at a certain moment would know all forces that set nature in motion and all positions of all items of which nature is composed. For such an intellect nothing would be uncertain, and the future, just like the past, would be present before its eyes. Pierre Simon Laplace.
And somebody, I'm not sure if it was Laplace himself, called this thing the demon. I don't know where that came from, but anyway, Laplace's demon. So there's this concept that if you know where everything is, then you can predict everything infinitely. And it was kind of just the start of what they call determinism, where you just it's a clockwork universe and everything happens according to the previous conditions, and it just goes through according to the physical laws.
That's something I can get behind.
Yeah, I introduced this idea to one of my friends when I was at university. It was like 10 years ago, and he's like, "Oh, no. What if I was moving my hand down like this and you took your reading?" And then I was like, but I'm just moving it over here, you know?
Got him.
Oh, well, no. And I said to him, no, hang on, because I would know that, you know, the air moving through my vocal cords is vibrating all the molecules in the air, and it's going to move against your eardrum and send an electric signal through your brain, and that's going to tell your arm, and by the time you've made your decision, it's coming down, and then you move, and I would have been able to predict it. And he's like, oh, yeah. And so that came this idea that, you know, humans sort of just kind of an input-output machine.
Yeah.
And people have criticized that, you know, they've said it seems that we aren't an input machine in a way, because depending on how our frame of mind will dictate what it is we notice in our environment and stuff like this. But when I hear that sort of stuff, I just feel like, doesn't that just mean we're a complicated input-output machine just because you don't understand all of it, or it's intricate doesn't mean that it isn't the way that is. And I think some criticisms of Laplace's demon idea as well is that I think maybe in quantum mechanics or something, they've found, you know, things where an electron seems to be in two places at once and they can't resolve it. And they're saying, well, because of this, we can't predict everything. There's uncertainty principles built into the... And I'm just like, is it, or is it just a complicated, you know, thing that we just don't yet understand the way it works? Okay. But determinism is a nice... point of view that you can use to augment nihilism in a way, because if you can say that everything we do is just a result of consequent, you know, stuff that's happened before us, then we're not really in control of it. We don't have free will, you know. And science on that, I think, is like, there's been studies where they, I'm sure I saw a cool video of they'd hooked someone up to an electrical sensor, and they've put a light on it and a button, and they've said when the light is red, press the button or something like that, and the sensor actually is reading when they're deciding to go, and it will change the light before they've
pressed the button. Yeah,
but here's the thing. Not before they've just pressed the button, not even before they've moved, but before they've known that they've made that decision. So they actually feel like they're about to go, all right, I'm going to do it now. And the lights change before they've made that decision.
Even decided.
Yeah, but it keeps happening. Every time they go to make that decision, it stops them. And so they've kind of, you know, through other means as well, kind of figured out that our brain is making a decision, and it's kind of sending that data up to our mind and saying, you've made this decision, and then you make the decision. Then you make the action or whatever.
That's the conscious part of it.
Yeah, so we feel like we're making a decision, but there's chemical processes that precede our decision that we don't appear to generate consciously. Right. So there's an argument there that the free will comes into it when determinism does as well. But with the lyrics to this song, it's set up as a challenge to a lot of what we call existentialism, right? So there's a bunch of guys who, you know, Nietzsche, I think, comes under that category. I'm not sure. Partly a guy named Jean-Paul Sartre, a famous French guy, a guy named Albert Camus, and there's other guys. And basically, they all kind of seem to come to the same sort of conclusion. They looked at the universe and they're just like, man, there's nothing much going on here. This is really meaningless, right? And they all kind of say in their own way that despite this, all right, knowing this, all right, the response that we're going to choose is to carry on anyway. And that actually, in the face of this meaninglessness in the universe, it's a brave thing to carry on anyway, okay?
Sometimes, carrying on, just carrying on, is the superhuman achievement. Albert Camus.
And I felt like challenging that a bit, and I felt like saying, well, is it a brave thing, or is it kind of like denial? You know, have you realized that everything's meaningless, and then you're just pretending that it isn't? Is that brave, or is that actually kind of cowardice? And that the brave thing to do would be to admit the truth of the situation and deal with that it's not. You know,
There is no justification for life, but also no reason not to live. Those who claim to find meaning in their lives are either dishonest or deluded. In either case, they fail to face up to the harsh reality of the human situations. Donald A. Crosby.
I think Albert Camus preferred absurdities, like, you know, in a meaningless universe, we're always driven to find meaning, so he called it absurd, and he said you have to embrace the absurdity. And
Man stands face to face with the irrational. He feels within him his longing for happiness and for reason. The absurd is born of this confrontation between the human need and the unreasonable silence of the world. Albert Camus.
Nietzsche was like, you know, you want to become a stepping stone to something that might be meaningful in the future, in the chance that it will be, you know, this.
Man is a rope, tied between beast and overman, a rope over an abyss. What is great in man is that he is a bridge and not an end. What can be loved in man is that he is an overture. Nietzsche.
Overman idea, and you know, other guys, you know, the existentialist is like, you know, we exist, and so if there's meaning to be found in the universe, as far as we know, we're the guys that are going to make it.
If man, as the existentialist, sees him as not definable, it is because to begin with he is nothing. He will not be anything until later, and then he will be what he makes of himself. Jean-Paul Sartre.
And there's a theme among a lot of metal even that is kind of like, you know, if it's not strike down the gods, it's become a god oneself, you know. And Nietzsche had a whole riff on becoming as gods as well.
God is dead. God remains dead, and we have killed him. How shall we console ourselves, the most murderous of all murderers? Is not the magnitude of this deed too great for us? Shall we not ourselves have to become gods, merely to seem worthy of it? Nietzsche.
And I wanted to turn that on its head as well. So I wanted to say, like, it seems like you're going through a lot of steps just to get back to, I'm going to pretend things are fine. And it just seems like it's as much a delusion as any other thing that you've criticized to get to the point that you're at. And so, and determinism was the way I wanted to do that in this song, by saying that if these things are meaningless, I mean, if these things aren't in our control, we don't have these decisions, then, you know, you carrying on is of no more or less consequence than not doing it. And, you know, again, I don't want to depress people that much, but I do want to offer a challenge to the big boys in the race of finding meaning in our lives, because, you know, if we can get through the challenges, you know, we'll be stronger for it. And so that's what I attempted, you know. And I think the criticisms of Laplace's demon and might, you know, again, I'm not convinced that quantum mechanics is going to solve those issues by making things uncertain. I think it might just be, you know, we might come to the point where we go, well, it's just too complicated and we don't understand it. But, you know, I don't know. Either way, I wanted to put all these doubts into the song. You know, it's all really quite depressing, and it's quite dark. Yeah, I think this probably is what you might call the darkest song. lyrically and musically, I suppose.
I mean, if you say so.
Well,
They're all quite dark.
I'm trying to come up with a critique of these things, but I think these existentialist guys have kind of said it as like, if their best defense is, we know, but we're not going to act like it is the way it is.
Yeah.
Perhaps I'm selling them short. I don't know, but yeah, I think hopefully it's effective in getting people to, I think maybe when it comes to the meaninglessness of life, a lot of people, rather than face it and be brave, even getting that far, just don't want to think about it. Just don't want to think about it.
Oh, wow, that's really, that's big and dark and important.
And it's like, yeah, I'll I'll think about that
Back to
later,
work.
maybe, or someone else will deal with it in the meantime, and I'll just carry on. And I think that's kind of just a human trait, because if we didn't act that way, it's probably an acquired trait from evolution. If we didn't just press on in the face of hopelessness or whatever, that we wouldn't have made it to where we are today. And so it's probably been selected for, and it's with us for that reason. That doesn't make it right. It makes it.
It means we survived.
Yeah, exactly.
To this point.
So, putting that all in there, I do like to sort of come up with a lyric that's confronting, and then kind of piece together my own criticism in my own mind for my own sake. I'd be hard pressed really to combat it, but I think that's good, because that means that these sort of questions about life and meaning and humans and all that sort of stuff is still a relevant thing. Hasn't been solved. And so I guess I'm not trying to close the book on that by being this dark and depressing either. But I think because it's something that people do like to just ignore or get on with their lives and not think about, that reminding them through a song is a good way to kind of remind people that there's still questions that need answering, and there's still inquiry that needs to be done, and there's still philosophy that needs to be written and thoughts that need to be thought. Okay, and that thought is, it's interesting to me. It's stimulating. So I hope through the kind of metal lens that I've focused in on this kind of thing in this song, that it would still bring people to a positive place. That and I guess if there's a positive thing to come out of the negativity there, it's that the final word has not been said on any of this stuff, or it has, and it won't matter.
Oh well, press on.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I feel like maybe did I struggle to put a positive spin on such a negative song just now? I don't know, but no, I don't think so.
I think what you're saying is, if at the end of all that, if it can make some people think about it rather than just ignoring it and pressing on, then that's got to be better, at least for that person.
Yeah, as long as it doesn't crush them. I see.
Could be crushing.
There's like an idea. It might have even been Nietzsche who said something along the lines of, "What doesn't kill me makes me stronger."
Out of life's school of war, what doesn't kill me makes me stronger. Nietzsche.
And that's been reiterated in its many forms over the years. I've always been a little bit hesitant of that idea, because I feel like challenge does make us stronger, but if the challenge is significant enough, it can crush you and make things worse. And so there's got to be the correct level of challenge and to keep you growing. If you've got none, you stagnate. If you've got too much, it crushes you and you never recover. And then there's this middle ground. And finding that challenge for oneself is probably important for personal growth and all that sort of stuff. So maybe my opportunity now to kind of criticize my own lyrics is a nice way of rounding it out, because it's not that I really think that my lyrics are so powerful as they could make someone depressed or crush them or whatever, but it allows me to give a more balanced perspective in the way that I talk, because I'm much more interested in talking about positive things when I'm talking to someone, but I'm much more interested in making metal things for the metal record, and that's a more negative thing. So,
yeah.
I don't know. Going forwards, I mean, there's of course plenty of positive messages in metal around. I guess when you want to make a black metal song and have all this darkness, making it a positive thing is maybe antithetical to it, anathema. I don't know. I'll find the balance one day. It's a work in progress.
Yeah. This isn't your, your only work.
No.
They still make it.
Yeah. It's funny, this song, like this and Greed of Lesser Men are probably the flabbiest songs on the album. They've got more riffs that probably, or more sections that could have been cut, and, there was just, we needed more metal and more song and more things to headbang to. But as far as musical, direction and functionality, there's a bit of fat on them. And I know that in my writing since this time, I've gotten better at trimming that fat. But this song has been picked up when we released our album. This song was picked up by a couple of places and picked as the single. Like, we didn't release any singles, but when a radio show or whatever, or a website that was going to promote us was going to pick a song to put on their media, this was the one they picked, and that always shocked me because, one, I mean, yeah, maybe it's a bit flabby, but also I guess it's the most pure in a single genre sense of any of the songs on the album. So,
well, that could be a reason why.
Yeah. Do you think I would have never picked this song as the more easy to digest the song because of its darkness and its oppressive use of blast beats and so on? But
yeah, but like you say, if it's the song that's the truest to a single genre, because the rest of the tracks are
pop parade.
They're colourful.
Yeah. So yeah, that did surprise me, and I was.
Is it long? Like,
I think it's pretty. I mean, yeah, moderately long.
Audio.
Yeah, long and dark, and lots of blast beats, and lots of places where it could have done something else, but they just went straight back to blast beats. And so, yeah, it is, I guess, the most focused or single-minded in its execution. Yeah, maybe people did find it easier to digest than the other songs.
I wonder when. I've thought of this recently myself, that people who have otherwise not heard the work before, and they're faced with a choice out of 6 songs, which one am I putting on the radio show tonight? Do they just scan over those 6 songs, and then in that 5th scan, it's like, oh, yeah, that's cool, I like that. And then, I mean, how many times did that happen through all that before they went to 5th, and then maybe the 6th, and then went back to the 5th, and then listened to it again? Yeah, how much time do they have in their day to do that? Are they like sitting on a bus or a train all day before they, have their radio show to decide?
Yeah, I don't know. Like,
Just they put it to vote?
When I do, occasionally I've read reviews and they've been discussing it in the comments or whatever, and they've said, I've listened to this album 10 times before I reviewed it or something. So, I mean, not this album in particular, but just generally, when people review albums. So, I don't know. I think critics must have a method.
Sure.
But
I bet they all have different methods too.
Yeah.
They'll be the same.
But like anything, at some point, if you have to make a decision, you have to make a decision. I would have thought that, as a general rule, the shorter the song, the more radio friendly it was.
We had a song play on a radio show last night, and Walls of Troy. So it was the
epic.
It was like a request line.
Okay.
And a complete random person, I have no idea who this person is, said Walls of Troy. Because we were tagged in it, we saw that, it had a vote or a suggestion or whatever you want to call it. It got played.
Yeah, okay.
And that's a 9.5-minute song on a radio show, that goes for an hour or something like that. I think that we'd taken up so much of that airtime with that song that song was never intended to be a single or something that people would pick for such a thing. Perhaps it was a test. Like, they've got that record and listened to it a bunch of times going, let's see if they play
You're going to
the
play this one.
ridiculously long song. I did.
I suppose, in our neck of the woods, as far as music genres go, there's a lot of bands who are doing these long-form songs.
Yeah.
And it's like you can't totally exclude a huge subset of the art that gets made because of the...
Because it's not radio friendly.
Yeah, especially when there are, of course, radio shows that cater to this kind of music. But
Yeah, well, I mean, then there's bands who do like a radio edit of the long songs. You can't really do that with... Can you? Is there a radio edit of Bohemian Rhapsody? I mean, that was groundbreaking to make it to the where it did for how long it is.
Yeah. Queen were a hit machine. They had so many hits, but they also on their albums had lesser known songs that were really long as well, like Bohemian. But Bohemian Rhapsody just broke through, I guess.
Yeah,
captured some kind of the attention of the people. But
again, like with what you're doing on your records, all choppy, changey music.
Yeah.
Completely different from the start to the finish to the middle.
Are a great band and really varied. Like on just one album, they've got such a variety of styles and stuff. Yeah, I mean, and when I think about how people can be critical of music that gets a little too varied for them, I just think about how amazing, and how influential and, how huge Queen are. I just like, what are you talking about? Like,
have you forgotten?
Yeah, have you forgotten about Queen?
Yeah.
And, man, the Beatles, man, they were pretty varied as well over their career. They had some weird stuff and some normal stuff. And, yeah, I think, I really... There's bands, that seem to kind of release just the better version of the last album over and over again, and as they refine their sound. And there are bands that change drastically from album to album, or every 2 albums or whatever it might be. I feel like I always better appreciate the bands that changing. Like it's almost like if I know a band is just going to put out the same album over and over again, I might buy one of their records.
You'd be less inclined to
and then just
suss it out.
Stick with that one.
Yeah.
But I know not everyone is like that. There are, of course, people who,
the album expectation paradox, where it just sounds like their last record. It sounds nothing like their last record. I can't keep anyone happy.
Yeah. And so when I see someone complain that a record is not like the last one, I'm like, could you not just go back and listen to that other one? It's like, no, I want new but the same. I'm like,
more of the same is, yeah.
I'd rather a band release an objectively worse album than the same album twice.
Sure. Yep.
And so have been artists that have over their career released albums that I didn't think of as much of, but I appreciated the change. And I feel like when bands do that, they achieve higher highs even if they achieve lower lows, and that's worth it.
Yeah, okay.
And so
there's definitely some examples of bands where I've listened to a particular record and wish that there was more of that same record. Not necessarily like I can't wait for the next album to come out and be exactly like this one. But I think I find that too when I discover a band or there's a band that I already like, and I find another band that's kind of doing the same thing. It's another band but doing the same thing, and I think, I quite like that. It's kind of like picking up where so-and-so left off, particularly if that band that I was already into had dramatically changed their style.
And again, I think everyone has at least one genre where they can just... doesn't matter. It'll be the same thing over and over again. Oh, yeah. They'll still enjoy it.
Got any AC/DC fans out there?
No, I feel like certain black metal is very...
there
are a lot of bands imitating old black metal bands. Yeah. And when it comes on, I'm just like, I like it. I like it.
Yeah, well, that's interesting. Especially after, I'd rather them get it wrong.
Yeah, but
Because I
yeah,
had to go at
that's
changing.
that's my one genre where I just
Yeah.
like when I hear that fuzzy guitar and those blast beats and that wimpy kick drum and that screechy vocals with a huge amount of delay on them that you can barely hear. I'm just like, yeah, I like
More
it.
of that, please.
Yeah, I don't get bored of it. But you know, when it comes to other genres, I'm just like maybe a bit more demanding or something.
Yeah.
It was important for me to have this kind of variety that we've got on this record because it's almost like if you've shown that you're willing to be a certain amount of varied, then people can't really get angry at you for changing too much because if part of your modus operandi is to keep changing, then what are they going to say? I wish it was more the same, like which song, you know, doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
So if you kind of establish yourself, sometimes annoys me when a guy or the exact same group of a band just releases something under a different name because it's stylistically too different. I'm like, no, sometimes, okay, sure, that's their decision and they're doing that. But I think sometimes it's some expectation from the fans and that if they do something that's too different, they won't like it as much under the name of whatever they're releasing it. And
Got an example?
one example, maybe not a great example, but there's a Candlemass album called Dactylus Glomerata, but it was never intended to be a Candlemass record.
Okay.
And it was meant to be released under another name because it was such a different sound.
Yep.
But the label was like, we want a Candlemass record. We want to stick the Candlemass name on it and we want it to sell because of that. And then they released it under the Candlemass name and it was not critically well received.
Because it wasn't Candlemass per se.
Because it's stylistically quite different. And I guess that's the lesson of why this happens. To me, I feel like creatives should be allowed to express themselves in whatever way they feel like, and they shouldn't be beholden to those the punters' expectations in a way. I guess I didn't want that to be in danger of that, I suppose, myself. So if you right from the outset go, we will not be dictated to stylistically by your expectations, then I am under no obligation to be dictated stylistically to anyone's obligations going forwards either.
I think we touched on it a few episodes ago. It depends on how you measure success as well with what you're trying to achieve. Because you say that this particular record wasn't well received by fans and critics, but it's what the label wanted. So there's two sets of expectations here.
Yeah.
That are different from each other. One wanted to use the name, and then the fans expect that to come out the same as what it was before, and it's not because the label, dictated the name be on the record, and then everyone loses.
Yeah. So yeah, would it have done better if it was released under a different band name? Maybe.
I think the fans know, right? It comes out in the press that, hey, by the way, this is just Candlemass. I don't know. Do they use pseudonyms for the members, or did they? I wonder what would happen.
I don't think so back then. But like, it's. I guess it's an interesting situation.
Because when you got a label and stuff involved, you kind of forego some of those artistic licenses when they say you will do it like this.
It was a choice, It's not going to get released on a label if you don't do the thing we say you're going to do.
Yeah.
Put the name we want to on there.
Which again, because without the label, it could have flopped for a different reason. Like it doesn't get distributed.
Yeah, and it doesn't get the recognition because doesn't get the name out there or the press or whatever. Yeah, I don't know.
Tricky one.
Yeah,
especially when you've gone out there intentionally to do something different.
Especially including that symphonic song, on the yellow disc, as you call it, was part of my intent to make sure that we, people would know to expect different kinds of things from us.
Hence, separating it.
As well, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that was like, because it didn't really fit well on this release, but to make sure it was under our name and with the same members mostly in style and everything, was kind of like us saying, this is the kind of thing we do, but also this.
Yeah.
If we just released this and then our whole album was just like that one and it was like 4 years later or whatever, people would be like, where'd this come from? It's like a different band.
Yeah.
But I think because we release them essentially both at the same time,
people accept it that it's
that's
normal.
part of how we operate.
Yeah.
And we could do anything from here between, or maybe even something else. And I think people, if you set up that openness, I guess, then I think maybe, hopefully, people will be more receptive to whatever
Another
stuff we're doing.
change,
Doing in the future. And since it has been quite a few years since that release, things must have changed since then. So we will have to see how it comes out.
We'll have to see.
And how people receive, and if it's different or what they expected or whatever. It'll be interesting to see. Yeah.
People are expecting great things.
Oh no.
No pressure.
No. Yeah. So yeah, we will see. We will see.
Okay.